Let's do it. Let's do it. Record me. Are you recording? Record me. Record me right now.
We are recording. It is episode
Hello.
94.
You're gonna edit out
94.
that other stuff, right? Right. That won't
Absolutely
sound so
not.
aggressive. I won't. Don't make me sound aggressive.
Doug is raring and ready to go on this uh, blistering October evening here. Episode 94
94.
of Sit on
You're
Mountain.
about to put this back in the 60s.
I
You're
don't know
about
what
to
I was
restart
thinking.
the road to 100.
The road to 100 continues right here at episode 94, sir. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. I'm doing all right. Pivoting a little bit, dodging, weaving, adjusting, making magic happen left and right. Basic bullshit.
Okay, oh, you're a magically delicious dude, sir. And so we're gonna make sure that continues and keeps on with the keepings on, man. As we do here, man. Let's do a little bit of talkings, man. What have you seen? And is this congratulations to the writers? I think this is our first
Yes.
episode since the things have been officially voted on and ratified for a
As of
3-year
today,
deal. As of the time of this recording, man, things are
96%. 90
96.
people voted no out of over 8,500. 90 people, which I'm
You
not
know who
picking on the
you
90
are.
people. I'm not picking on the 90 people. What I'm saying is that is incredible.
Yeah, it is.
Considering there were far less that voted yes to strike.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that so many voted in support of this is fantastic. It's
I'm with
incredible.
it. I'm with it. Yeah. So good shit for that. Sorry to interrupt you, sir.
Oh, no problem.
What do
That
you
was pretty
bring
well.
toward to the table today for what we've seen since the last time we spoke?
I'm going to mention four movies, and two of which are right on target with our topic today. The first
Okay.
one, unfortunately, as of this recording, if you missed it in theaters, you're going to have to wait for the home release, but I cannot begin to tell you how much you need to track down this home release. One of my anticipated films to see for the rest of this year was a film called Blue Giant, a manga adaptation by Yuzuru Takikawa. It screened for 2 nights, October 8th and October 9th, and that was it. That's all G Kids was doing for it. The score for this movie is by Grammy winner. There she is. Hiromi Uehara. Her music is so fucking good. If you're any kind of jazz fan, check out the score. You can find it on Spotify. If you don't want to go that far, go to the Blue Giant review on Elements of Madness. You can find the Spotify playlist at the very, very bottom. I put it in there for a reason. I've been listening to this thing nonstop. The story itself, if you've ever seen an anime where, if you're thinking like superhero, there's that one dude that's like, I'm going to be the greatest fighter ever. And then you watch that journey. This story follows Dai Miyamoto, who wants to be the greatest jazz musician. And it's him moving to Tokyo. He meets two other people. They end up forming a jazz band and the story that goes. But the music that they make is so fucking good. And I found myself not only being impressed by the music and by the way that the animation shifted to convey the intensity and the power of the jazz, but the narrative starts off in the expected places and then got really surprising. I found myself incredibly emotional by the end of this. It is probably, I think it's my number 3 film of the year now. It just shot straight up the list, completely unexpected, and can't recommend it enough. So that's Blue Giant. The second one, because I've talked about her other 2 films that I've done restoration reviews for from Cult Epics, Marlene Goris, her third film, that she released in 1990, The Last Island, is getting a 2K HD restoration. If you heard me talk about Question of Silence, if you heard me talk about Broken Mirrors and you were intrigued, check out this film. It's about 7 people that survive a plane crash. They land on a deserted island, 2 women, the rest men, and it's about them trying to figure out, can they get away? Can they survive on the island? If they can't get away and they can't survive on the island, are they the only people left in the world because they can't make contact with anybody and nobody's come to look for them, despite the fact that there's technology on the plane that people should be able to track? It is done through the male gaze, the female gaze. It looks at religion. It looks at war. It looks at conflict. It looks at friendship. I found it very compelling. It releases on the 17th. Excuse me. It releases on home video on the 10th. And I'll have a full home release review for that. But I do recommend it again. Marlene Goris, The Last Island, available from Cult Epics. If you heard me talk about the other two films, this is her third film. The next one is available on digital now and in select theaters. John Currin's Mercy Road. It's Luke Bracey, who you may have seen in stuff like Violet, Elvis, Hacksaw Ridge. Apparently, he was Cobra Commander and GI Joe Retaliation. Oh, apparently he was in Interceptor. I forget her name. Who led it? Elsa Pataky, the Netflix movie. But Mercy Road is Luke Bracey, Toby Jones, and a couple other people. But it's all shot in primarily one location in Luke Bracey as Tom's car, who he has just committed a violent act, and shortly after it discovers that his daughter is missing. And then he gets a mysterious phone call. Hello, Tom. You must do something for me if you want your daughter back. And this is, if you watch the trailer, that's all you get. And it's all within the first 30 minutes. This is like an 85-minute movie. It gets intense. It gets psychological. I have my own theories on it. It's going to be a mixed bag for some people. But if you're looking for something that's like going a million miles an hour and does something kind of interesting, check out Mercy Road again on digital now and in select theaters. Last but not least, because I am this very week going down a Todd Browning rabbit hole, I watched The Unknown, the 1927 film with Lon Chaney and Joan Crawford. It is a film in which Lon Chaney's Alonzo he has no arms, and he's in love with the circus ringleader's daughter, played by Joan Crawford. Her name is Nanan. This is set again back. This is a silent picture set in the 1920s. And it turns out Alonzo's a man on the run for various reasons. He's in love with Nanan, but the lengths that he goes to try and win her, it does not work. I am about to watch The Mystic and then Freaks, which I've only seen parts of because Criterion is releasing all three films in one collection. I had not seen The Unknown before. It's a hell of a film, and I'm looking forward to checking out the other two, because while Lon Chaney is a remarkable actor, these films also have, this film and Freaks in particular, I don't know much about The Mystic, have really shaped the public's perception of individuals with disabilities, and not necessarily in a good way. So I'm fascinated to go down this rabbit hole. So these are the four films that I've seen recently that I would recommend checking out. And The Unknown, again, I think it's streaming on Criterion now, as are the other two. But if you want to own them in a restoration, they are coming available on the 17th.
There you go. Boom.
As fast as I could.
More movies for you. I got two that I'll add real quick. One, The Ballerina, or just Ballerina, came out on Netflix earlier this year.
I heard about this.
Yeah, I hadn't heard about it. I caught it while I was just randomly scrolling the other day. For those of you who don't know what it's about, like me, or you're just looking for something to scroll on Netflix, it's directed by Lee Chung-hyun. It's about an ex-bodyguard who has learned all the usual particular set of skills that are out there. That can't quite associate with people, with the exception of one young lady, her friend, because Korea has not gotten there yet. It is her friend. Wants to meet up with her. The friend wants to meet up with her, and upon meeting, she has been killed. So our ex-bodyguard friend, and the friend leaves her with one final request, and that final bit of request is vengeance for me. And that's what this movie's all about. Is this girl trying to find out who killed her friend and why. Now, it sounds like this would be a great action type joint. And while there definitely are action scenes, it falls a lot more into the thriller genre than I would say the action genre. For only 90 something minutes of movie of runtime, there's a lot of it that's just kind of setting the tone, man. There's long swaths of no dialogue whatsoever, as they're just kind of laying the mood down for you. A lot of if you're a fan of, like I am, and the poster will show this as well, neon lit movies, that neon noir type thing. There's a little bit of that going on there in the first act until things take a little bit of a shift. It is a bit of a sluggish little second act until you get to that inevitable meet up between her and the bad guy at the very end of the third act. It is a good movie, man. I dug it. It's Netflix has garnered that reputation of just pumping out a whole lot of trash. And it seems like they're making strides. For whatever reason, they've really broken into the Asian market to bring things in. And this is one of those like hidden gems that if you sift through the muck, you're like, okay, that was pretty good for a nice little weeknight movie to get you through your evening and get you prepared for bed. I had a lot of fun with it, man. The action is a bit over stylized. Think back, not quite Born Identity-ish levels of frenetic or franticness, but kind of in that manner. The camera is doing a little bit much during those fight scenes, so it's kind of hard to keep up what's going on. But when we're talking about drama and setting that mood, that's where this film I think really shines at is all the build up to the action, and then the what happens after that action, moving back into the character work of it all. Dope movie, man. I really dug it. It's like I said, it's only 93 minutes, so worth your time if you're scrolling on a Tuesday and you got nothing else going on. Check it out.
Quick question, because it hit my timeline today. I knew it was coming out, but I didn't know anything about it. The lead actor, the one who I guess is the titular ballerina, Jung Jang Seo. I hope I've pronounced that somewhere close to correct. She was apparently in Burning
Mm-hmm.
as the pivotal young woman who goes missing. By any chance, have you seen Burning?
I have not. Is that no? That's not what I'm thinking of. No, I have not seen this movie.
If you,
Stephen Young, I remember hearing about this flick,
this
but
movie
no, I
is
didn't check it out.
tense. It is incredible. I don't know if I saw it in 2018 or 2019. I'd have to check very quickly. But 2019 February, when it came out on home video from Welgo, it may have been my introduction to Steven, where I recognized him, or maybe I knew him from Sorry to Bother You. That may have come out by this point. But this whole cast, and particularly Steven, is incredible. Highly recommend. If you're looking for a really strong thriller, check out Burning.
There you go. There you go. My second movie, man.
Mm-hmm.
Finally got around to watching this joint. Came out earlier this year. I watched, I think for us in the American market, man. Sisu. Finally sat down and checked this movie out, man. And I would like to take this moment to apologize to the filmmakers because I did not know they said, let's just make a movie for Daryl. And
Uh-huh.
then it took me that long to finally get to it. This movie is every trope of a 1970s action movie in 2023 that you could possibly hope to get. Man, I fucking love this movie. Another quick 90 something minute movie. Yeah, 91
Mm-hmm.
minutes, man. If you're unfamiliar with Sisu, you can rent it on Vudu, I do believe. Yeah, and apparently it might be on Amazon Prime. You can rent it there as well.
It's if it's the Sisu I'm thinking of that you're about to describe, it's also available to own on physical formats.
Oh, there you go. It's also available to own on physical formats. It's about during World War II, a dude digging for gold. Um, he finds a nice, thick, veiny bit of gold out in where I can't remember off the top of my head where the fighting was, but dude's just minding his own fucking business. This old guy mining for gold.
Finland.
Fuck Finland, thank you.
Finland 44.
And is bringing the gold that he mined home. When he runs into the Nazis, and of course the Nazis start fucking with this guy. And yes, we do not like Nazis here on this show. Starts fucking with this guy, and they find out the hard way who they're fucking with. Like I said, this is every 70s action trope. It's the you've never heard the tale of this guy. You get that trope. You get the you should have just left him the fuck alone trope, and all the good. Like if you give me a movie that starts off with blah blah blah, it means this in English. And I'm like, yeah, that scratches my itch right there. And then you give me chapters throughout your movie, you're already like a star and a half in for me. And this
Mm-hmm.
gives me both. Um, and it's just 90 minutes of this dude mine this gold, got stolen by the Nazis because they wanted to fuck with him, and he wants his shit back, and he's gonna do what he's got to do to get his shit back. The end. I was about 40 something minutes into this movie until I realized he had not spoken a word in this entire fucking movie. And you do not get a word spoken until the very last lines of
Mm-hmm.
the film. And if you're looking for a little bit cheesy, a little bit campy, But still just an incredibly well done and entertaining movie, man. I think Sisu is right up there. It reminds me of in the 90s when we got all the post Reservoir Dogs, we want to be like Tarantino type movies that were coming
Mhm.
out. It reminds me of those, only done well. Like this
Yeah.
feels like it could have been Tarantino's second movie when he's not working with a skyrocketed budget. It's got that kind of feel and grime to it. It's kind of shot that way. There's some action that's just like that Tarantino gleefully does. Um, and it wasn't until I went and looked at what people are saying on Letterboxd, and a lot of people are like, Tarantino, right? This is the low budget and glorious bastards. But yeah, it's a fun movie. An unstoppable killing man who says no words all throughout. It just scratched every itch I needed it to.
Uh, I loved this movie when it came out. I think it was April, and I have on purpose not bought it because it would have hurt me knowing that I'd buy it and not have time to rewatch it. But if you are a physical media sort, if you've seen it and it tickles you, just as an FYI, yes, it means paying a premium. But if this thing is of value to you at Best Buy, you can get a copy of Sisu that's a steel book. Now, ordinarily, when it's a steel book or it's a special package, if it's got a slipcover of any kind, it goes vertical. This one goes horizontal. And the only reason why this matters is because the art of it has a blade going across our dude's forehead, so when you slide it out, it's like you're taking it right off of his forehead, just like in the movie.
Wonderful, wonderful. There's so many good deaths. Um,
Oh,
they don't fuck with subplots, none of that. My man is on a mission
yep.
and he gets shit done. And like, you're watching this movie, you're like, all right, Nazis, shorthand for bad guy. You don't have to do any work. You just know Nazis equals bad guy. And at some points, I'm like, it's kind of lazy writing. And so you get a little bit more of the Nazis, and you're like, oh, these guys are delightfully, gleefully bad people. I love rooting against these guys.
Mm-hmm.
And they, just because they're Nazis doesn't it's not the singular reason why they're doing what they're doing. They have their own motivations on what they want to do with this gold as well, which I found was it makes it from a one dimensional character to maybe like a one and a half dimensional character. Not nobody's 3D or fully realized in this movie, especially not our main guy.
Oh yeah.
All paper thin characters, the paper is thin plot, and so much fun from beginning to end. Loved it.
Uh,
Loved it.
I agree completely. It's one of my favorite films released this year. And if you have seen it and would like to learn about how the movie was made, friend of the show, Thomas Manning, actually spoke with the writer director earlier this year. And that interview is available on Elements Madness for you to check out.
There you go. Boom.
Hip, hip, hip. So we are here to talk about our chosen topic for today. Apparently, we've talked about midnight movies. We've talked about cult movies. We have talked about horror films of the 2010s, but we have not talking. I've been hanging out with my kids too much.
None of the talking.
Costed, because my son bought something. Costed. No, we have spoken about horror films, but not in a general sense. So we thought we'd take a look at it. And with my usual list of potential films, we've got stuff like The Shining and The Craft, Doctor Sleep, Black Swan, Witches of Eastwick, Train to Busan, both versions of Little Shop of Horrors, One Cut of the Dead and Final Cut, Get Out, Us, and Nope. Suitable Flesh. Do recommend that one. If you're looking to be scared and horny, just confused at the same time. It's almost like Snoo Snoo, but worse. The Halloween series, Pick a Movie. The Evil Dead series, The Unknown, which I just mentioned, Possession, Loose, the Puppet Master series, Silence of the Lambs with Daryl, just recently watched, The Orphanage, and so many more that could be mentioned, but I'm not gonna. So that's just an example of a few films. If there's some on there that I mentioned that you're not familiar with, go look them up.
There you go.
They could be good for you this month.
This is the month to do it, man. With this being the month of all things spooky and scary, figured this would be a great time to go ahead and dive into it on a more encompassing scale and not just in the niche ways that we've done it so far.
Yep.
Would you like to go first, sir? Would you like me to go first?
I can do this. I can do this. I'm going to begin. I'm going to do mine in chronological reverse order because, incidentally, it'll also be more meaningful in that direction, what they
Okay.
mean to me. Now, I have seen over the last couple of years, I am a giant chicken. Those of you that know me, that have listened to this show over the last 94 episodes, or the previous 93 anyway,
The
have heard me talk about
road.
have heard me talk about how prior to being serious in film criticism, I didn't really get into horror because there's a lot of stuff that I couldn't stomach. But I have found my way into the genre um, by exploring in areas that I am a little bit more comfortable with. And this film is, to me, not seen by enough people. It is not spoken of when people are looking for recommendations for horror films in October. It is a film that, if you have not seen it, cannot recommend it enough. It is available for purchase on physical. It is available to rent digitally. It is Matty Doe's The Long Walk. This is a film that it's drama, it's horror, it's science fiction. The general premise is an old Laotian hermit discovers that the ghost of a road accident victim can teleport him back in time 50 years to the moment of his mother's painful death. So we're dealing with a time travel movie. But it's not a time travel movie like Looper is a time travel movie, and it's also not a time travel movie like Back to the Future is a time travel movie. But it is also, it's dark, it's fucked up, it's thoughtful, it's emotional, and you will finish it and it will consume you a little bit. You will feel like you need to sit with it post watch to process what you have seen. I would liken this, if you're familiar with what's his name, J.A. Bonilla,
I
The
don't know.
Orphanage, who did The Orphanage, where you get to the end of that movie. Now, this doesn't have that kind of twistiness, but where that film, you sort of sit with it and what have I watched and what did I just experience? You'll do the same thing with The Long Walk. I've talked about it on the show before. I cannot recommend it enough. I do not feel like enough people have seen it or spoken about it. So that is my first recommendation.
Boom, there you go. Horror, not my bag. I don't really get down with it too much. But there is one movie that is horror that I have rated 5 stars out of 5 stars. So I'll start with the one that is of no surprise to anybody, 2017's Get Out. What hasn't already been said about Get Out, man? It's Peele's, announcement to the world for the most part. Um, it's layers upon layers upon layers upon layers. The thing with, I think, this movie is we we didn't know what we were getting. So now it's like we're 3 movies in, and we know that all of his movies will be drenched in layers and meaning and symbolism and all that kind of good stuff. But this movie, we didn't know that. So it was this fresh, brand new experience from a fresh new voice doing horror in a way that, not that it hadn't been done before, but in a way that we hadn't quite seen. For a lot of people out there, horrors are just your Freddy's and your Jasons and your Michael Myers, people running around, or screams getting killed in a million different ways. This was something different. This had a message to say. And it really made you think and want to go back and research and dig and delve throughout the movie. And that's not even touching upon his actual eye for direction.
Mm-hmm.
um, the first of now 2 collaborations between him and Kaluuya. I'm hoping that this is a Scorsese De Niro or a Scorsese DiCaprio situation, because I feel like black film doesn't really have that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think Spike might have this actor. He's done 1 or 2 movies with over here, 1 or 2 movies over there, but nothing quite in the long run do we have anything like that with. And I'm hoping that this is the beginnings of something like that.
I
And
was
if
kind
not,
of he doesn't do that with Washington. Hasn't he done more than two? Mo Better Blues, Malcolm X.
Malcolm X, A Little Bit of Blues.
Are there others?
I mean, he stole John David for Black Klansman.
Stole.
So I guess
Wait,
the
wait, can't
Washington is
can't can't
Inside
say
Man,
stole.
right?
If I remember
Inside
right,
Man.
as a little kid, Washington worked with Spike Lee. He was in one of the movies too.
Oh, there you go. So at least three movies with Inside Man. So yeah, I think that's. I have to go back to the Spikeology, but those are the three that come off the top of my head. But yeah, I'm Get Out is good enough that Peel has a blank check for me. I've got, as they say on the Ringer podcast, I have season tickets on Jordan Peele. I will always be showing up based off the strength of this first movie, which is an absolute delight. And I don't think anybody saw coming. Sometimes you're like, it's who with who and so about this. Yeah, it's going to be a banger. And then when it's a banger, we're like, well, we all kind of knew it was going to be a banger. This came out of nowhere, and it was amazing to see. So that's my first one.
That is a great one. Um, and I agree with you. I really liked Key and Peele, and I had you could see some of the darker stuff, the Mad Magazine influence, the spy versus spy that the two of them, both Key and Peele, have talked about. That was the sort of background for the escalation in all of their sketches.
I hate it. I hate it. I hate that we do not have a spy versus spy Key and Peele movie.
Jesus, that would be amazing.
I've been saying it for like 10 years that we
That would
need
be
that.
glorious.
Yes.
I mean, the two of them have took the success that they had from that show and have been able to parlay that into phenomenal successes in different directions for the two of them. So if they could take a break and come back together to do that, I would buy the ticket today. So I agree with you completely on that. But you watch Key and Peele and it gets fucking dark. So I was like, all right, this could be really interesting. And if I remember correctly, they sort of kept what it was about a bit of a mystery. And they've done a pretty good job, I think, of doing that with also Us and Nope, where you get a little bit, but you don't get enough to actually know what it's about. Everybody thought Nope was an alien invasion movie. I mean, it was, but it wasn't. It was just somebody who'd survived a monkey attack.
They
So
give you enough to give you the tone of what the movie's going to be, but not the story of the movie.
exactly. And I think Peele is likely a student of Hitchcock, but Hitchcock had a tendency, as I understand it, to sort of give you enough information to let you fill in those blanks. And these trailers feel like that, where he's given the audience enough to fill in the blanks with their information. It's going to be horribly wrong,
Mm-hmm.
but with their
Enough to
information.
make you think you know what's going on.
Exactly. And yeah, he's become a writer director that when I hear that they've got something where you and several other people are with like Spielberg and Scorsese, for example, I'm like, fuck it, I'm there. Like, what is Peele doing? I want to check that shit out. It just jumps up a couple of levels. So I agree with you completely. If he could direct Get Out a second time, I would totally vote for that.
Oh god, get out of here. What's your next pick, sir?
What I've got the
The
what's his
Bradley
name,
Whitford
Whitford
beard?
beard going, so
Yeah.
had to go for it. I'm gonna jump to 96 because there's a film. It is technically horror, but it's also an action film and it's a comedy. It has an incredible soundtrack. I actually still listen to it, and a cast that includes a number of A-listers just having a great fucking time. And more importantly, it's a film that not only have I loved, just because I think the story's great, the stakes are wonderful, and I'm a big fan of this director, but also I went and saw this movie in theaters in high school, came back and convinced some of my friends to go with me. And my friend Ashley, I was over at her house and we were getting ready to leave, and her parents were talking to me about it. I was like, oh yeah, it's totally appropriate. There's nothing, you don't have to worry about anything here. I'm talking about From Dusk Till Dawn by Robert Rodriguez.
Oh, what? Okay.
We were 16. Um I'm sorry, Mr. and Mrs. Sadler. I lied.
We have it on record finally.
I mean, it probably didn't mean shit to Ashley, but it is one of my favorite memories. For those of you that are not familiar with From Dusk Till Dawn, there are two brothers, Seth Gecko and his younger brother Richard, played by George Clooney and Quentin Tarantino. and they are on the run, having sort of badly robbed a bank, and they have a hostage. And they are on their way to Mexico to meet with some people to trade cash for freedom and get out of there. Well, Quentin Tarantino plays Richard, aka Richie, and he keeps fucking things up time and time again. And it gets even worse when they lose their hostage and they need a new one. Enter Harvey Keitel, the former preacher, on a road trip with his daughter and adopted son. And they use them as cover to get into Mexico, at which point they go to the meeting place, the Titty Twister.
Yes.
It's a biker trucker bar, mostly a trucker bar. You have to have one to get in, and what's his name? Danny Trejo won't let them in until Harvey Keitel shows up and is like, "You see that big rig? I'm a trucker, and here's my ID and whatever." And so they're there until all of a sudden everybody turns into a vampire, and it's every single person for themselves.
Right.
But this is a movie that has Fred Williamson, Tom Savini, Michael Parks, Cheech Marin, Juliette Lewis, the aforementioned George Clooney, Quentin Tarantino, and Harvey Keitel, and of course Salma Hayek. When you think, and I love her as an actor, she is phenomenal as a comedian and gets underutilized in that genre personally. But I have had a crush on her since Desperado, and this movie did not help.
World has had a crush on her since Desperado, and this movie helped immensely.
It is one of the sexiest scenes in a movie. I think it's worthy to be on the list. And it's once again, no, not once again accompanied, because I think the song from Desperado was not by Tito and Tarantula, but they were performing in the movie, so we'll let it count. Again, I'm a big fan of Robert Rodriguez, and Tito and Tarantula show up in a bunch of their different things, and they use their music. But anyway, so From Dusk Till Dawn is my number two. This movie rules. It still rules. I love how this is tied into Kill Bill, because Michael Parks is playing the exact same dude from the massacre in Kill Bill.
Sheriff.
And anyway, so if you haven't checked it out, give it a shot. If you have seen it, but it's been a minute, trust me, rewatch it. It's still just as good.
Still just as good. Good call. That wasn't on my list. I wouldn't even thought about that, but good call. I got back to 1980 for my next joint, man. Another director I almost had season tickets for. Not quite, although I don't think he's making any movies these days. Stanley Kubrick. I'm doing The Shining, man. I think all three of mine are different facets of horror, whereas Get Out's more of a psychological type thriller, I would say. The Shining's horror comes from dread, I think, and just a pervasive sense that something isn't right with this hotel and something isn't right within our protagonist, and something isn't normal within little Danny Torrance, man. Famously, the movie that Stephen King hates adapted from his novel, The Shining. I think you can take it apart and look at them separately as two individual works of art. I think this movie stands on its own. It's a shitty adaptation, but a great and wonderful piece of work in the Stanley Kubrick oeuvre, I think. Casting Jack Nicholson kind of makes sense. If you want somebody to go crazy in this era, Jack was your go-to. That doesn't quite help. The whole point of this is Jack Torrance's slow descent into madness. I think Kubrick or Nicholson plays that a little too early, because Nicholson's face just says crazy when it's normal most of the time. So he had a bit of a struggle at the beginning of trying to get across the impression of a sane man, because Jack rarely looks like a sane man. But the watching the descent and the scene where you finally see how much he's snapped, where Wendy is looking at the almost called her olive oil. I watched the Popeye movie the other day. of her
Better
culture.
than people give it credit for. It's not great,
Bro,
but it's better than people give it
so
credit for.
much better than people give it credit for. I was like, Altman might have been, he wasn't cooking, but he was heating something up with this movie, man.
The
Robin
night
Williams just,
before Crystal went into labor with Preston, we watched that because it had come out on Blu-ray.
of course, you did. A very Davis
I was
experience.
working. We
Um,
didn't know she was going into labor.
you're the only person within the 300 million people in the United States that night was like, let's watch Popeye.
It was coming out on Blu-ray. I was watching the Blu-ray to do the review.
Okay,
And then she wakes me up and goes, "Hurry."
hurry, hurry.
Well, she
We
didn't say
have our
hurry.
own little sweet pea.
She was like, "Hey, remember what happened like 5.5 years ago? Yeah, we're doing that again. Let's go."
All right, let's go. Yeah, The Shining, man. It's watching that whole scene from when she picks up the all work and no play, all the way through the backing up of the steps with the baseball bat and all that. I think is just one of the all-time greats within the horror genre. I think is the tenseness. Jack finally getting the cut loose. Shelley Duvall really letting the waterworks come in, man. It's the relationship between Dick Halloran and little Danny Torrance is a special one. So much going on in this movie. Setting everything with the maze early on. So much goodness in this movie. I love it. And in that final hard cut to Jack in the snow after he's lost Danny in the maze. That shot, I think, is one of my favorite shots in film.
I didn't I studied The Shining uh, in an adaptation class I was taking in undergrad. And I don't remember reading the book, but I remember the discussions about the movie and the differences. So I wasn't too taken with the film, but because of Doctor Sleep, I went and rewatched it. And if you haven't picked it up on 4K, it's wonderful. It really is a really solid restoration that was released. But something that I noticed, you were talking about Jack as an actor, not always looking particularly calm. Something that I liked about this is that the way that he plays the character is he's got a temper. I mean, he clearly does, and he's trying to fix things with his family, but he's seething the whole time. He is just looking for an excuse
Hmm.
to get angry and to let it out. So I sort of liked that you can see it in his facial expressions in these moments where you can kind of tell that it's right underneath the surface. And I watched this visual essay that was talking about how frequently Nicholson actually looks at the camera,
Mm-hmm.
and as that is a representation of he's looking past his reality into this new one, or us as conspirators to what's happening, that perhaps we're parts of those spirits, all of which are fascinating theories. But I'm curious because you are a Stephen King fan, as I recall, right? You've read these books. You've got them
Box right
all.
here is a box full of Stephen King books that I just scooped up.
So, what did you think of Doctor Sleep? You said that The Shining is not a good adaptation, but is a good movie. What did you think of Doctor Sleep?
The movie,
Mhm.
I quite enjoyed Doctor Sleep. That's what really put Flanagan on the map for me. It wasn't his Netflix shows, which have been heralded. It was Doctor Sleep, and he seems to be like, for all the shittiness that we've gotten through the decades of King adaptations, it seems like one man has risen from the ashes to be like, I am the King guy. And everything he's done on Netflix has been like his resume for like, this is why you give me keys to King's Kingdom, which kind of culminates or will culminate in the Dark Tower, but culminates up to this point in Doctor Sleep, and he's got to ride that thin line between making an adaptation to this book and to the movie as well, and or yeah, to the book and the movie, and he does a fine job, as good as one could. Um, there's a character in a King book that said, like, when it comes to whittling, you're just staring at the block of wood and seeing what's inside that block of wood, and your whittling skills are as good as how can you get that thing that you know is trapped in there, how much of the wood that you don't need can you get out. And I think that that's what Flanagan did. He did as good a job as he possibly could serving two different masters, and he squeezed liquids from both into a concentrate that is delicious in Doctor Sleep, and it's kind of what like Rebecca Ferguson had been putting in work already, but that's what really put her on the map for a lot of
Mhm.
people as well, as Rose had there. So she had that 1-2 combination, I think, of that and whatever her first Mission Impossible movie were about that same time frame ish, within maybe 3 years of each other, somewhere
And The
around
Greatest
there.
Showman.
Oh yeah, I never did see that movie. So yeah, that's when she really started sizzling. So yeah, I'm a fan of Doctor Sleep. That is one of the few books that I have not read yet.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Right on. Right on.
And what's your final, sir?
My final one, I had no choice when we talk about horror films. I'm sure it was on my list for cult movies. When I think of horror films, this
I
is not my.
legally forbid you from doing Army of Darkness for yet a 9,000th time on this show.
I wasn't going to do that.
Okay.
I was not going to do that. That felt there are certain cheats that are allowed and then that aren't. And yeah, even I'll be like, look, I've already talked about Army of Darkness enough. Instead, and actually, it's what I meant to look for it sooner and forgotten. I wanted to see if I had it in here, but in my last film is one from 1975 and is a movie that again has an incredible cast. This is a cult classic. So when we did our cult classic movies or midnight movies, what have you, I probably talked about this then.
Sir, Close Encounters of the Third Kind is not a horror movie.
But it means something. I don't know what it is. Uh, so the aforementioned friend that I mentioned with From Dusk Till Dawn back in high school, this was before I could drive, if I remember correctly. But it was Halloween. Some of my friends were getting together, but I couldn't join them. My brothers were out. My parents were gone. And this was when what's that? God damn, I've suddenly forgotten the name of the channel. FX. FX had just started up as a channel. They were live broadcasting from like this penthouse room that people would come into. They were playing episodes of Wonder Woman, Greatest American Hero, and all kinds of shit. Like just whatever they could get their hands on to bolster it. And one of the things that they ran on Halloween that I watched for the very first time was the Rocky Horror Picture Show,
uh,
directed by Jim Sharman, 1975. It's an adaptation from a stage show. Yes, it's a musical. Tim Curry, Susan Sarandon, Barry Bostwick, Richard O'Brien, who wrote it, Patricia O'Quinn, Nell Campbell, Jonathan Adams, Meatloaf, Charles Gray, and of course, Rocky himself, Peter Hinwood. But I watched this movie and it was startling to me. I knew who Meatloaf was, I knew who Tim Curry was, but it was just really startling to me in a number of different ways. And throughout the years, being a fan of Rocky Horror has helped me create and cultivate a number of different relationships that I wouldn't have now. What I was looking for was my membership card from high school. I actually signed up and became a member of the official fan club, the creator of which I believe passed away within these last few months. But this is a film that helped me make friends when I went to Kutz Camp in Warwick, New York. That helped me to make friends when I was on the entertainment board at UNC Asheville and for 3 years ran the Rocky Horror Picture Show. I turned people that had never watched it once and got them to dress up in lingerie that we bought at Victoria's Secret and got them to strut down the aisles. It's where I've met one of my closest friends who I call a sister and is an aunt to my children, and a whole lot of things just would be different. So the Rocky Horror Picture Show is a transformative experience for some people. It is a bad movie with really great songs that are even then are questionable in their quality. But just because you love something doesn't make it good. And this is sheer camp, and it is the definition of a cult film where it just people came to it and they made it theirs. And it's the fucking Rocky Horror Picture Show. That's my number one.
there you go. Boom, done and done. My final is we go 2 years from The Shining, which is 1980 to 1982. Whereas the first movie Get Out, it says a little more psychological, a little more cerebral. Maybe that's a better word for it.
Mhm.
And The Shining is more of like dread, just constant dread looming over everything. This joint, man, is one of the finest definitions of paranoia that exists, and that is, of course, John Carpenter's The Thing. Um, Kurt Russell, Keith David, and maybe my Keith David role ever just mad as fuck about everything. Wilford Brimley, it is the guys at a was it the Antarctic research station or something. Well, yeah, they're doing science work out there, and this thing is taking over the bodies of the people or whatever it can get his hands on, not just human beings, living organisms, is masquerading as them until it gets found out and it has the ability to remove itself and get to the next body. So you're in a remote location, cut off from all existence. This thing is able to mask itself, and you don't know who is who. Who can you trust? Who can't you trust? And it's not like I'm just gonna walk away from this because you're in fucking Antarctica. It is a master class of abject paranoia, man.
Mhm.
It is giving us some of the best practical effects
Mhm.
with the, I think is the dog. Yeah, that dog transforming. We see that with them testing the blood. I think is one of the great tense scenes of horror movies, that them testing the
Mhm.
blood in the petri dish and all that kind of stuff. And one of, I would say, maybe top 10, top 15 best endings to a movie of all time, because you don't know who's who, if one of them is the thing, either of them is the thing, or what's happened. Because Keith Davis gone for a while in that movie until he shows up again, and you can't tell whether or not that's him. I think there's a little bit of time we lose Kurt Russell as well. So
Mhm.
yeah, it's just a great ambiguous ending. And me and a friend had an idea for a podcast called What Happens Next, where you talk about movies and their endings and like what does the next day look like in this movie. And I think this would be an all-time, like, when those credits end, what the fuck do those two dudes do next? um Great lingering question, and that's why The Thing is one of the great horror movies.
I didn't watch it until maybe a year or two ago.
I think I
And I
watched it maybe
tell
for
you,
the first time 4 or 5 years ago.
really?
Yeah.
Uh, I can't remember if I do know when it was. It was by sheer happenstance, but yeah, I ran with it. The year that uh David Gordon Green's Halloween Kills, I believe, came out. I went ahead and watched the original Halloween and then watched the first new Halloween in that trilogy. And since I was already exploring John Carpenter, I went and checked out They Live, and I forget if I did anything else. It surprised me how many John Carpenter films I had seen, not realizing, not thinking that, like, oh, I like these John Carpenter films. Why haven't I checked out these other ones? Because I love They Live.
Mm-hmm.
And as dumb as it is, I love Escape from LA, even though it's just Escape from New York, but in LA.
Not a
But New
good
York
movie.
doesn't have the plastic surgeon of LA with that
Doesn't
wonderful
have
chin of
Kurt
his.
Russell surfing.
It also doesn't have that. Or playing basketball. But yeah, that's when I watched The Thing, and I did it off of 4K that had been released. It's beautiful in 4K, another really, really good one. Um, the Escape from LA one, that one had some issues, so make sure that you check which version you're buying before you purchase that. But yeah, The Thing lived up to its reputation. Everything that you talked about in terms of talk about creeping dread, talk about uncertainty and paranoia. I couldn't help but laugh the number of times you talk about Get Out as being cerebral when they're stealing fucking people's bodies, swapping brains. Um, but you're absolutely right. You lose enough track of enough people that questions form, and even now you don't really know. There's so many theories, and if you try to follow the theories, if you know about them while watching the movie, even then you still can't tell. There's enough inconsistency or enough space where you go, okay, maybe this isn't as clear cut. and whether they're drinking gasoline or they're drinking whiskey or whatever the fuck it was, and neither of them could tell, it doesn't fucking matter because they're both going to die unless
Right.
somebody shows up and one of them is actually the thing, at which point they might still survive because they were in that big old ship that was found. So who the fuck knows? But if you can get it in 4K, I do recommend. It is a good looking fucking movie.
You can get a two movie box set apparently on Amazon, which I would assume is the thing, and maybe it's prequel, which answers it really hooks you because it starts off with like, why are they shooting at this dog running across the snow? I gotta figure what the fuck's going on, and it really hooks you in quick. So
Oh
there
yeah.
you go. Go ahead and get that checked out.
And if you do go for the two movie, make sure that you check because if I remember correctly, The Thing, John Carpenter, is an adaptation. It's a
Hmm.
remake. So is it The Thing, John Carpenter with the original Thing, or is it the new version of The Thing that they made, which I don't remember if it was a prequel or a sequel.
It's a prequel. It
It's a
ends with them
prequel.
shooting at the dog.
Ugh,
Yeah. So one literally rolls right into the
right
other
into
one.
the other.
Yeah. That's all I know of that prequel because I was like, I'm not watching that. And I have it on good authority. People are like, yo, it's better than you think it is. For a it's a good gap of time between those two movies. So I guess it would be considered a legacy prequel. And they're like,
Mhm.
hey, it captured the mood and the tone. And then it dovetails right into the original that we know and love. So boom, six movies for you to check out during this spooky season.
Yeah, unfortunately, we have no challenge to discuss this episode. Due to circumstances, we had to pivot at the last second, but this is enough. This is enough. You've got some wonderful recommendations here,
Mm,
either to track down online, to look for at your local theater, or to find at your local video store to get your movie on, spooky or not.
spooky or not, there you go. Boom, 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 boom. Do you have anything else before we wrap this bad boy, sir? Before we head on into episode 95 in a couple of weeks?
Nothing sparks the brain. I do think with it being Halloween, there's some interesting stuff coming up. I find it strange how there's also some horror films releasing in November, but they are tailored toward upcoming holidays with both Thanksgiving and It's a Wonderful Knife that are
Yes.
both coming out in November. I'm fingers crossed covering It's a Wonderful Knife, so I'm looking forward to that one.
Dark Harvest has a, if you're listening to this the day it goes up and you can move quick enough, today at Alamo Draft House, Dark Harvest, a fantasy horror, is having a 1 day only before it hits streaming. 1 day only release at the Draft House. I think it's Shutter that it's coming to streaming, but don't hold me to that.
Okay.
But there you go. Something else to check out, man. And that
There
is
you go.
it. That is it for episode 95, 94, 94 on the
94.
road to 100, man. So we'll be back with a couple more weeks with some more cinnamon goodness right here for you.
Sounds like a plan. Watch more movies, folks.